I want to introduce first my co-host for the week. She's going to be our roving reporter as well, Allyson Berger. Allyson, welcome. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here for my first time at NAB, and I think it's going to be a really great show this week. But I think what the most exciting part is that we're starting it right now with Mitch.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So our first guest is Mitch Dubin, and I wanted to welcome you to the program because I'm really excited about having you here. You're a member of the Society of Camera Operators. It's a wonderful organization, and you are a camera operator. Unfortunately, most times people get to watch your films, but don't get to realize that you made the stars look as good as they do because they don't necessarily get to meet you or see you, and they don't put up a billboard that says, Saving Private Ryan with Mitch Dubin.
No, that's true. You have to wait till the end of the movie before you see my name.
And you know, you got to wait till it goes through all those people who starred in the film. You've worked on some incredible films. You're Steven Spielberg's camera operator pretty much at this point exclusively, but you do a lot of other stuff. And it's kind of amazing. I mean, I look at the list of films you've done and I'm excited. You've done a Die Hard. You've done Airheads. You've done... So you laugh at that, but I love that movie.
That's a great film. And the director of that film, Michael Lehman's a friend of mine, and we both started in the business at Zoetrope Studios, which was Francis Coppola's studios in San Francisco. We both started as telephone receptionists together, and Michael Lehman, myself, and some other people, and we've all moved up, obviously, in our lives through our careers, and I've done a couple of Michael's movies. Heathers, he's the same director. I did Heathers with Michael.
What does that mean, a telephone receptionist in the business?
You answer the phone. Hello, Zoetrope Studios.
That's literally what you did?
Yeah.
I thought you were like on set doing that or something.
No.
I thought that was an on-set position.
That was
like
my
back
first
in the day,
job.
we didn't have cell phones, and you had to stand there and be like, Mr. Spielberg, this call is for you.
You worked your way up the ladder.
Yes, I did,
For
absolutely.
sure.
That's a remarkable story, though. I mean, because working from the front office, like you've heard people say the mailroom, receptionist, whatever it is, I mean, literally going from that to being a camera operator is a big move. That didn't happen overnight, did it?
No, and that's what's great about the industry is that there is like this apprenticeship program you go through. I started, answering the telephones. One of my first jobs I ever did was I was working there during the post-production of Apocalypse Now, and I got to screen all the dailies, all the rough cuts, all the different versions of the film. It was amazing. I also had to, carry flatbed editors up 3 flights of stairs and do a lot of physical work. But the interesting story is that one of my jobs was to inventory all the equipment that was owned by Zoetrope. And when they came back from the Philippines, I had to inventory all the camera equipment. I had no idea what it was, but I stuck little stickers on it. And then months later, when they needed to do additional photography, they said that they wanted to use these cameras. And they said, Mitch, where's all the camera equipment? I said, well, it's here. I don't know what anything is, but I know where it is. And they said, okay, well, why don't you come out with us and you can work with us. And I worked as like a camera PA on the reshoots of The Black Stallion and then Apocalypse Now. That was my first introduction into camera. I was young, but I realized then, that first day on the set, that that's what I wanted to do.
And they basically taught you. You became an apprentice. I mean, you didn't go to formal training to learn how to be a camera operator.
I did go to film school, but I learned much more on the set than I ever did at school.
Which most people do. You don't get the same type of experience unless you're on set, hands-on, doing what you need to do.
Right. So I started as a camera PA, moving equipment and carrying stuff, and then I was a second assistant, which I assume I was a loader when we had film. I was a film loader, and then I was a second assistant who does the slates and the logistics, and then I was a focus puller, first assistant, and then I moved up to camera operator, which I fell in love with that job, and I've had options to move up to being a cinematographer or lighting cameraman, but I love what I do as a camera operator so much that I stayed. I said, this is it, it's good.
And when we talk about these films that you've worked on, I mean, look, you've worked long enough in the business, you're going to have a lot of films you've worked on, but when we talk about some of these films, we really look at films that were revolutionary and that changed the way filmmaking was at the time. I mean, today we laugh at Any Given Sunday, right? But the reality was that film was revolutionary. The game scenes looked so realistic. That's what the audience felt, at least back then. Saving Private Ryan, it was just, there's a Saving Private Ryan look. Now, part of that is Dale Grant and what he did in color timing after the film was shot, but a lot is the way it was shot by the other camera operators who were working on the project. And
there were only two camera operators on that show.
Sure.
All those battle sequences, 2 cameras.
So, I mean, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying, is you have so much of an impact on each film. What's it like to have, when you look back now and you've had so many films that have been revolutionary, that have changed the business, what is it like?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially Saving Private Ryan had a huge influence on the look of so many movies afterwards. I mean, it was, and a lot of that is Steven Spielberg, a lot of that is Janusz Kaminski, but the whole idea of shooting with skinny shutters and shooting with, gates that, there's some technical tricks that we did, but also it was just the handheld look. And I think that's the first time when a big major motion picture was entirely handheld, the whole movie.
Yeah.
And
when you say handheld, do you mean handheld or do you mean on a Steadicam?
No, on my shoulder.
Wow. Did you have surgery after that? Did Steven send a masseuse to your room every night? I mean, you're basically an athlete when you think about it.
Well, I was much younger then.
I think you still got it.
When Steven comes to you and he says, this is how I'd like to shoot this film, here's my concept for it, and you have to now execute that, I mean, what's the dialogue there?
Well, I mean, one of the interesting stories about Saving Private Ryan is that I don't, as a camera operator, we don't, not always involved in the prep. A lot of times we just show up first day of shooting. And I remember, so I was there, we started shooting in Ireland. That's where all the D-Day sequences were shot.
But I imagine first he has to say, I'd like you to shoot this handheld. You don't show up and not...
Well, that's the interesting story. The very first shot we did in that movie, that we physically did on day one, shot number 1, is, if you can recall in the movie, it's when we're in the landing craft and the door opens and we're behind all the American soldiers and you see all the German bunkers in the distance, and all the soldiers in that landing craft just get slaughtered. And the only way that we could get a camera in that landing craft was for me to put it on my shoulder and stand in the boat. Take one, it happens, and it was so dramatic and so. The point I was making is that the only way to physically get a camera in there was for me to stand there with the camera on my shoulder. And the doors opened and it was take one, and it was like so spectacularly dramatic and gory and emotional that at that moment, I believe, that was when Steven decided, you know what, we're going to shoot this movie handheld. And I don't think it was until that moment that was ever a part of the plan. Because one of the things about filmmaking is to be available to the spontaneous. I mean, you need to have a concept and a plan, but you also have to be available to be creative and be spontaneous to what is presented to you at that moment. And so all of a sudden, the realization hit Steven that this movie needs to be handheld. And the reality of it was that we really weren't prepared to shoot this movie handheld. We had heavy cameras. We were using Panavision cameras. We had image shakers and flashers, and the camera was incredibly heavy.
What do you do then?
You suffer through it. But the interesting thing that I like to relate is that I felt that in the end, the fact that we were unprepared with the type of, the equipment was heavy, we were lugging it up and down this beach. We were the same as the actual GI American soldiers that landed at D-Day. They were unprepared. They were had too much gear. It wasn't planned out well, and it was almost as if the equipment became part of the story and helped tell the story in that way. When we finally sorted it out and ended up getting lighter cameras, and I could be much more nimble and faster, was when we shot the Rommel battle sequences at the end of the movie, where they become much more like, guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
And then we had the right equipment to do it. So it was funny that it worked out that way. That we had heavy cameras and we're filming the D-Day sequence. It was perfect. And then when they sort of go more into the guerrilla tactics, we had a really light camera that I could run with and whip pan with. So
at least
it
you
worked
didn't have
out.
to climb up Pontohawk and do all that part of the scene with the heavy cameras.
Which part?
For Pontohawk, on D-Day with the cliffs. When the soldiers had to climb up and they didn't know the cliffs were going to be that high. And I'm talking about the real life history story of Pontohawk. And, can you imagine
I did run up the cliffs with a handheld camera, though.
But, you make a really interesting point about how, you can plan and plan and plan as much as you can to make a film. But when it comes down to it, you're creative and you have to be able to just create on your own. And that also takes me to the point of you saying you're a storyteller. You create stories.
Yes. Yes.
You may be a camera operator, but you're really creating a story.
But I think that's what camera operators do. We are the people that are involved in the storytelling process. I'm here at NAB. It's first time I've been here. It's overwhelming with all the equipment that goes into telling stories. But the bottom line for a camera operator, it's really less about all this stuff, and it's more about the 4 lines of that frame and what you need, lens choices and the position of the camera and what equipment you might choose to use. But it's always to the end of telling the story.
Right.
Mitch, Digital Phil is watching from the great state of Texas. We have a Slack chat, so he's been watching. And he was like, Mitch Dubin, the camera operator from Saving Private Ryan, is on. I can't believe that. And he wanted to know if you felt that was your hardest film that you've ever worked on. And I imagine it might be because of the challenges of having to go handheld.
There's a lot of things that you would evaluate when you decide which film is harder or not. It could be physically hard, but it could also be emotionally hard too. But I have to say, Saving Private Ryan, it was probably the most fun I've ever had on a movie, believe it or not. And that's because we all got to play Army and, get dressed up and blow things up and run around and get dirty every day. And I was exhausted at the end of the day, and physically it was really difficult, but it was so much fun to do. And all the actors on that film were all hilarious, and everyone was always joking around and practical jokes, and Tom Hanks is hilarious. And I remember the first time that I saw the movie when it was screened, and it was so emotional and devastating, and I'm thinking, wow, this is not the movie I remember that we filmed, because we were really having a blast doing it.
That's pretty spectacular.
Does that happen often for you?
That the movie's different from what I shot? Yeah, it does. It is, because, we construct a movie one shot at a time, and you get involved with what you need to construct that shot or that scene. And sometimes, because you're focusing so diligently on that moment, that once you move on to the next setup, you sort of forget what you did previously. And it's really hard, to predict what the movie's going to be like when it goes through all the post-production and everything else that's involved.
Because there's so many other aspects that are involved, and it's really a collaborative process.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
One of my favorite movie franchises of all time is Die Hard. So you got to work on the last film.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, it's the same.
I think that's Mitch's motto with all of his films. Got to have fun.
Well, it's a lot of hard work, but you definitely have to make it. You have to make it work. And
I feel like Bruce Willis almost embodies John McClane, and so that wise ass, smart aleck kind of guy.
That's who he is.
Right. So I mean, that must make filming it a lot more fun too.
Yeah. I mean, it was a physically hard film. We did a lot of nights. Every time you see a shot on the screen that's at night, it usually means that you have 100 crew members staying up all night from, sunset to sunrise. And so we had a lot of night shooting. But it was, the director of that film was great, Lynn Weissman. And it was interesting because he's a director that started his career as a prop man and then moved his way up to directing the, I'm not going to remember the series of movies he did, but anyway, he did a great job, and it's nice to have a director that understands the crafts a little bit, and
And
I appreciated what everybody was doing.
Those are two kind of action movies we just talked about. I mean, Saving Private Ryan's really an action movie, right? I mean, it's not your typical action movie, but when you break it down, it's an action movie. A lot of action, shooting a lot handheld, and then you shoot something like Lincoln, and that's completely different. And it's kind of
very different.
Saving Private Ryan's beautiful. Die Hard, not so much. Certainly, Lincoln is a beautifully shot film.
Yeah, Lincoln was beautiful. Probably about as different movies as you could get Lincoln and Saving Private Ryan. But that's what's great about what we do, is that every job is different, every experience is different, different script, different crew, different actors. Daniel DayLewis, for me, one of the things that's so great about my job is working with the actors and being the first audience to these great performances. And it was an honor for me to watch him work and to portray Lincoln.
What I was going to say is, that's what I was going to ask about this, is I imagine that there are challenges on every film, but the challenge of working with him specifically on this film in such an important role, in such a singular role, must have been unbelievable, because not only are you the first audience, but your relationship with the actor makes such a difference. I mean, Eric, who's a camera operator, Eric Fletcher, our good friend, talks all the time about his relationship with Michael C. Hall in the kill rooms in Dexter and how important that relationship was. And so I would imagine that you really helped shape the film because of your relationship with Daniel DayLewis that you probably form on set in a matter of days.
Yeah. This particular film was a little different, but normally, yes, the operators have a really strong relationship with the actors, and oftentimes, after a take and they say cut, the actor, the first person they're going to look at, and they're going to look up at the camera operator with that little questioning eye, and you're there to support them and to help them whatever way you can. But Lincoln was a little different because Daniel DayLewis is a different type of actor. He's very method, and he basically was Abraham Lincoln 24 hours a day. He would show up on the set in character and never broke character, and really he didn't want to be interfered with. I mean, the process of making movies is very complicated, and for him to perform the way he does, he needs to try to focus all that out. And so we had very little dialogue with him on that movie. He spoke with Steven, and that was pretty much it. So what my job then became was how to do the job that you need to do as a camera operator around an actor that doesn't really want to have anything to do with you, which is fine. I mean, it's just...
But I would imagine then nonverbal communication becomes really important, especially your body language too, right? Yeah. He's going to read off of that. Even if he says, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to know you're there, he's still reading your body language. I couldn't believe for a second he's not. Plus, you have to nonverbally communicate with the rest of the crew, I would imagine, as much as you can.
We had it. It was like the most quiet set I've ever been on. No one talked, because part of that was almost reverence for what the movie was about. But it was a really quiet set. But the other thing about Daniel DayLewis is that he is obviously has done a lot of work. And so, the difference between stage acting and film acting is that there are a lot of technical requirements to film acting that there isn't on stage. And he's done enough work, obviously, that he understands what that is. So even though you don't have to tell him, he knows. He knows what lens is on the camera. He knows where the camera is. He knows the restraints of the frame. So that's what a professional actor knows.
It sounds like a lot of your movies almost become real life while you're working on them. Do you think that's something that you've kind of adapted over the years, or?
Yeah, unless you're doing a big science fiction visual effects movie where everything's green screen. But, every film is a different experience. It's a different community of people. It becomes a different family in a way. And it's just a really amazing group effort of what it takes to put together a movie.
So what's the biggest thing that you've learned throughout your career from one of your best experiences on set? I got you coffee. You should be able to think by now. I didn't spike it or anything. I know we're in Vegas.
No, I think the thing that I've learned, and it's not necessarily the one thing I've learned, but the most important thing I've learned through the years I've done this is that filmmaking is a collaborative process. Not one person can do it. It's not a one-man band. And everyone contributes, everyone participates on different levels, but, even the person that does craft service provides an important role.
Right.
to
Because you have to
supporting
make sure you
everybody.
can take for later. Got to get on their good side.
But yeah, no, it's an amazing group effort, and that's what's fun about it.
So if, it is a team effort, but I'm sure you've had situations on set where, maybe you didn't get along so well with someone, or, you didn't bond that well with the actor, and you have to build this relationship that you were just talking about. How does one overcome that and, make the best of what they're here to do?
We're all professionals, and in the end, you know that there's a finite limit to the job. It's, it can be 3 months, it could be, 4 or 5 months. But you're professional, and you're here to do your job, and you do the job the best way you can. And I tell people also that really, to be successful at what you do in the film industry, for me, it's not just panning and tilting a camera. Anyone can pan and tilt a camera, but it's how you relate with people. It's a lot of it is being a nice person and being respectful for everyone. So I spend 12 hours a day or more right next to people that I work with, and you have to treat each other with respect and understand what they're doing.
You've got 2 films that are in production now that you've been working on. Can you talk about them a little?
Which ones?
I was told, in all honesty, I was told off set right before we came on, and
Okay.
I haven't.
Kingsman 2?
Yeah,
I haven't had my coffee yet, so she didn't get me coffee.
I'm sorry, I take
Allyson,
care
where's
of our
my
guests
coffee?
first.
You can drink off this side, and I'll take that side. No, there are 2 movies.
He's a movie set guy. He's ready to offer up his coffee. Thank you, Mitch.
There are 2 movies that, on IMDb it'll say in production.
Yes.
But because they're still working. We shot them last summer. One is the sequel to The Kingsman.
Yes. By the way, did you do The Kingsman?
Not the first one.
I
just
love
the
that
sequel.
movie.
Yeah, it's great.
So I'm excited that you're doing the new one.
It was fun.
So should we
That
say,
was
is
a
it
lot
going
of
to
fun.
come out better, the second one, because you're on it?
I think it'll be better not because of me, because it's an amazing cast and it's a lot of fun.
I want a phone call, and I want hey, you won't believe the gadget they just used on set. I love gadgets.
Well, then the other film is that will come out again this summer that we shot last summer is Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you're familiar with the book, but it's a science fiction book. So we did a lot of motion capture work and a lot of visual effects work. But it's that's going to be a good film.
Do you like doing motion capture work, and is it make your job a lot harder? And is it not as? Because to me, I don't love it. I don't love watching it. Even when I know it's motion capture, and I don't love shooting green screens and motion capture and all that stuff.
Yeah, green screen is like now so much a part of the industry that I've just gotten used to it. And when I see a green screen, you just have to filter it out of your mind and understand what will be put in place there. Motion capture is different, actually, because in the world of cinema, motion capture. You'd be in a room like this, and it's filled with all these camera sensors. So as a camera operator, I don't do anything in motion capture. The actors wear their suits with the little sensors, and they do their thing.
But you're shooting them in suits, aren't you? You're not even shooting them.
No.
Oh, wow.
It's all recorded digitally. And then you go back later, and you put a digital camera into all that digital information, and that's where you create the shot.
I always thought that it was you shooting. Okay.
No, it's all done later. And when you add the digital camera to it, you're offset, you're in some sort of booth, and that's a lot of fun because you can put the camera anywhere and you can move it through this table and right through someone's head if you want.
And you don't have to lug it on your shoulder.
No.
So what do you think about how the industry is changing and all the new capabilities that you can do with filmmaking? Because you've been doing this for quite some time, and you've seen the changes with technology. What do you think about it?
To be honest with you, there has been a lot of change in the technology, but in terms of the process of how we make movies, it really hasn't changed that much. I mean, we still bang 2 pieces of wood together to sync the picture and the sound, and I don't know if we do that just out of custom and tradition because they still have the digital numbers going up there, but the process is still the same. It's still, for me as a camera operator, 4 lines on a frame, and then we still have to light it, and maybe they're LED lights and not tungsten lights.
Sure.
But it's The
But those are
equipment is
just the
there.
tools.
That's right. The tools might change, but the process of making a movie hasn't changed.
So we've gone from, we pretty much no longer use film anymore.
Right. Although that's not true. The next film I'm going to do, we're shooting film.
Well, pretty much, I said.
Yeah.
I did say pretty much.
You want some coffee?
Yes, thank you. Are you going to be upset now?
No.
I don't have a cold, I promise. Oh, now it's all over me. That's why I don't drink hot coffee. Oh.
This is why I only
By
get
the
coffee
way,
for the guests.
My dry cleaner watches everything we do and just goes ching, cha-ching.
You better just move into a close-up now so we don't see the spill.
Yeah, let's get a tighter shot. So what I was going to say is that most things aren't shot on film anymore. But like you said, the process is still the same. Yeah, you're not changing out mags all the time, but you're changing cards or whatever the memory is. And so, and it might look different. I don't know how you feel about the difference in digital to film look. But other than that, it's the same. You know, the cameras are pretty much the same form factor. The tools change a little, and it gives you more options. I look at it as the tools. It's just another tool in the belt, right?
Right. Yeah,
and so that's how I look at it, and I think it's fabulous, but I also think it's fabulous that you still shoot the same way or make a film the same way.
Yeah, we still lay down dolly track. We're still on dollies. We still use cranes. They might be telescopic cranes with stabilized heads. But again, I look at these old pictures of, Hollywood in the, the 30s and 20s, and I said, that doesn't look a whole lot different,
right?
Except they wore ties.
Now, would you wear a tie? Would you dress like this, or would that drive you nuts?
Yes.
No. So do you like film? I mean, do you prefer film to digital? And that's just a look thing.
It's a look thing, and yeah, film is beautiful. Analog is beautiful. I mean, the people that like vinyl records understand the difference between, digital music and analog music, and that's the difference between film and digital cinema. The only thing that has changed, unfortunately, is that, and I experienced this on the last movie that we shot film, is that because so many people are shooting digital, that the film cameras are being neglected a little bit. They're not being kept up as well. So the viewfinders are not as good as they should be, and the cameras break down more often. And, it's like you don't have the industry behind shooting film, so they don't support it in the same way.
Exactly. You can look at Cuba, right? They're driving cars from the 50s. They still work perfectly, right? It's because they're maintaining them. We're not maintaining them. We're not manufacturing the parts as much. We're not keeping the technology up on that side of it as much because there's less and less people that want it. And so, unfortunately...
But that's, that's the type of issue that no one cares about that goes to the movies. It's the only issues that we have to contend with.
Your favorite experience on set ever? There's got to be one story that jumps out. There's got to be something where
we talked a lot about Saving Private Ryan, so I have a lot of good stories of that, so I'm not going to tell those. But there is one story, maybe from Any Given Sunday, because you mentioned that.
Love that film.
And there was a scene, again, that was a lot of handheld. And Oliver asked me to do that movie, the director, because of Saving Private Ryan and all the handheld.
Wow. And
that he wanted that same feel of a battle sequence on a football field.
Now, have you ever been on an NFL sideline? Or
yes.
You have?
And my God, it's insane.
It is insane. And were you on an NFL sideline before shooting that film?
Yes,
Okay.
But that was part of the research of shooting that movie. We went and sort of scouted some games. And I watch football. I love football from the TV or from the stands. But when you're standing on the sidelines and watching a game, it is so fast and quick and violent, and I don't know how they make sense of it.
I've been on the sidelines with people who I've gotten on the sidelines who have said, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. This is too barbaric. Get me off the sidelines.
Yeah,
that's how the difference from watching it on television. So I think that you needed to do that, and it's amazing that you did. And then so you made it look like that for the viewer.
Yes.
And I imagine that was the goal. And so you were telling the story about...
there's a shot that we're doing. It's a game sequence, and I'm the point of view of the quarterback, Dennis Quaid character. And, we had a lot of professional football players, like Lawrence Taylor was in the film. And so this shot is Lawrence Taylor playing linebacker, is blitzing, and he sacks the quarterback. So I'll never forget this, because I'm sitting there, I'm holding the camera, and Lawrence Taylor comes running at me, and he's a really big guy, and he's really fast. And I can see he's getting closer to me. He's not slowing down at all. And literally, he runs at me full speed, and like 6 inches before he gets to me, he slows down enough to just pick me up and lift me in the air, camera and everything. And then he sort of gently puts me down again, and I'm like shaking. And
Wow. Wow.
Thank goodness for insurance being on set.
By the way, I've seen that scene, obviously, and it's a very realistic scene.
Yeah, it was very realistic.
To you, too. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been fun to have you on. Have you had fun?
Oh, yeah, this has been great. I was a little nervous, but it's fantastic.
You made it. You survived.
Well, usually we make the guest drink an entire cup of coffee first.
Or
and
spill
that way,
all over the place.
Right, but that way you have to go to the men's room before it's over, and you just are like, I got to leave. See you guys later.
I'll do that now.
Mitch, it's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Before I let you go, one
Thanks,
question. This just came in from Jenny, who's watching in Finland, and he wanted to know, and I forgot to ask this question because I've asked it so many times of Dale Gran, what's it like working with Spielberg?
I have to say, my career, I've been so fortunate to have done, I think I've done 15 movies with Steven. And I work, you forget that, you get involved and you do these movies with him, that there's another world out there. And then you work with other directors who are talented in their own right. But Steven is a genius. He's a master. And I don't know, whether you like his movies or not, as a visual storyteller, there is no one better. And he knows how to use the camera. He thinks like the camera. He understands how to block out a scene. And he can walk onto the set without any prep and come up with these incredible shots and how to design and cover a scene. So, yes, for me, as a camera operator, it's the hardest director I will ever work with, because he comes up with these very complicated shots.
He's testing you.
Yeah, but it's the challenge that makes the job fun.
Well, and he's smart enough to know that he should be flexible enough to see a shot like in that first shot of Private Ryan and Saving Private Ryan and say, you know what, this is magic. We have to do this the whole film. Yeah. Where somebody else would have been like, could we use it more? Maybe. Could we, we don't have the right cameras. Okay, forget it. He didn't care about any of that. Yeah. And then, we sit here and he's a genius. Mitch, thank you so much. Thank you for the movie magic. Thank you for making the movies better that we watch. This gentleman is a camera operator, and you don't realize how much interaction he has with the actors and how much interaction translates onto the screen. He has so much influence over what we see. It's so important. And that's why the Society of Camera Operators is so important. You're a member.
Yes, absolutely.
And we have to tell everybody, go to soc.org. You can become an associate member. If you're really a camera operator, you can become a full member. There's a whole process, but it's a wonderful organization, and it needs to be treasured and loved and passed on, and we need to donate to it, and we need to... I'm a member.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.
No, it's good. It's an honorary society for camera operators, and sometimes I think that camera operators, only other camera operators really understand what we do. So, because we're a little bit of a solitary figure on a set, and it's great to have this brotherhood of operators that we can talk to and commiserate and trade notes about.
And there are SOC awards, so people get recognized, and there's a charity that's involved.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful organization, soc.org. I got to thank you, Mitch. I've got to thank Kristen, of course, for setting this up and for doing such wonderful work at the SOC. And, of course, my good friend Eric Fletcher, who entertained you while I was getting here, stuck in traffic in Las Vegas. If you can believe there's traffic in Las Vegas during NAB like we're in New York. Yes. Oh, my God, it's unbelievable. We're going to be back after this. Stay with us. Your live continuing coverage of NAB 2017 right here from the Live View booth at the Las Vegas Convention Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. So much more to come. Stay with us.